And thank you so much, Dr. Brandl. And Michal, if I may call you that, and I know, welcome to call me Ingrid. We look forward to discussion with you. And let's see, let's see if we can, there we go. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining in the discussion. Such difficult work that you do. And you left open, as you said, some questions. The sentence that just hit my heart so strongly was, for the Jews, the war didn't end May 8th, 1945. And that, I think, is such an important point that is so often overlooked, and certainly your work speaks to that. Would you tell us more about your work? And yeah.
Yes, well, we here have a very small chair of Judaic studies that started in 2007, and by 2012 we started our undergrad and graduate program. And what I do, I'm a historian, so I did my MA in Jewish history in New York, and then I did PhD in post-war Jewish history. So this is mainly what I do. I'm trying to understand myself and then explain Jewish history of Croatia, sometimes Southeastern Europe, from the Jewish perspective. It's something I strongly believe it's a mission different than if I would be like a regular historian. So it's what actually where I started. As I said, we are very small and very young community comparing to Jewish history in general. And what I try to do is first to put it in a general, like a global Jewish context, not as a minority history of Croatia. And what actually put me through the post-war period is, first I tried to avoid the Holocaust subject. At that time, I still think that people have to do it at some point and stop. It's not very healthy topic to do over a great period of time. And I first wanted to avoid this. At this time, I also, building my own family, try to understand as why are we where we are at the moment in Croatia. So the key I thought was in this immediate post-war period. So in between of return and rehabilitation, and then leaving to either Western Europe, Americas, or later to the State of Israel. So this is something that I really try to, this is why I found myself doing the research I'm doing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And when you mentioned, I believe you said that between 1944 and 1952, 2/3 of the Jewish people left Croatia. So in other words, just did not feel, tell us more about, and I know you spoke, but fill us in with some more details about this.
Yes, so it's a bit of a similar story as other Central Eastern and Eastern European countries, and a bit different, because unlike Czechoslovakia, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and so on, Yugoslavia was right after the war under the control of communist regime. So we didn't have this period between 1945 to 1948, or the communism started right away. As a general note, the Jews didn't think about the political systems. During the war, they tried to survive. So we had Jews being either refugees or in the partisan movement, some of them being communists, but majority of them being part of the middle class, urban element since the beginning of 20th century, and a lot of times in either free professions or in small and middle businesses. So kind of individuals and independent. And with the new system, this proved to be impossible. So right away, we had some kind of restitution that was connected to repatriation. So whoever wanted to ask for the property back, they needed to repatriate. And this was the main reason to repatriation. Also, learning the lesson from after the First World War, when stateless Jews were expelled back and forth from different new nation states, they tried to avoid this as well. So coming back, right away they got the property back on paper, but not in reality. So they could manage it, but not own it. So they owned it on paper, but could not, it's very hard to translate it in English, but could not manage with it. If they also had loan building, they got only one apartment to use themselves. They said, you don't need more than one apartment. So it's something that right away, with also this atmosphere, and they found this atmosphere in ego documents of mistrust, and even towards Jews as such, not only Jews as bourgeoisie, but also Jews as such, they opted to first, whoever could leave before 48, which was not simple because it was forbidden, so they could probably give the property away and just got the passage out. And also later, with the establishment of the State of Israel, they were allowed to leave there, with no passport, with a document, and with a certain amount of money they could carry with them. So they had to leave the artworks, and sometimes the family rings, were taken from their hands on the way to the. So it was really, so in a way, they were victims of the Holocaust in a period before that, some of them being even in partisans or refugees in the territory and of controlled by partisans, and then at the end becoming kind of, I had hard time to find also positive stories because they were positive stories. So as a historian, I need to document all of them. So I tried to avoid the hard history, and then I got kind of hard history back.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Jewish people, they come back to, and again, it's Yugoslavia, and they're not allowed to be citizens. They're not allowed to go back to their homes. They've lost everything. So most of them, I mean, it's hard to even imagine how these individuals who lost family members and so forth, how they even lived. I mean, were there some people that were taking them in, or were they, I mean, it just, and again, such hard stories, but and then it sounds like the communists just took the property and made it state property, basically.
Not only to Jews, to everybody. So this was something that sometimes some historians explain as this was easier for them because it was not only them who were targeted, which I think it's not really a historical argument. So it's actually this wave of nationalization and putting different people in your own property, and even sometimes people using what to study. So if they study something with technical drawing, they can use a bigger room, so they don't get a roommate in their own room in the apartment. This immediate post-war period is not very good research still in Eastern Europe. It's something we really don't, I mean, maybe in some Eastern European countries, but as far as I know, it's relatively, it's not researched well. And then to apply this to, they were happy, I mean, they survived. And then they fought with what they had. They didn't have that much time to think about it. But the best answer was the high percentage of those that left. And I think this is what is answering our question.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me, in what ways do you cooperate with people in your line of research and so forth in recovering stolen properties and art and seeking reconciliation for the wrongs from that lengthy, not just from the World War, but all those years that followed?
So I'm cooperating mostly with the World Jewish Restitution Organization and claims. So it is them who negotiate then with the government. And it's very hard actually we do meet in conferences, researchers of the same topic. What is very hard with our country is that all those nationalized buildings later was sold in 1990s, in the beginning of the democratic system, to those that use the apartments. So this is something that will not be easily solved. On the other hand, we start to discuss and to do research also in the state level of the mobile property, work of art, and so on. And there are, so I was kind of, I was outside researcher, so I did it for the Jewish organizations. On the other hand, for instance, the Ministry of Culture opened their own expert team that is doing an amazing job now trying to systematize the works of art where they are being held. So this is a positive, these are the positive steps. So we have some steps that are very hard to take because we don't have that property here anymore. On the other hand, we have this new generation of researchers that is doing a hard job to at least try to there is no justice. I mean, it's a very hard question that bothered me doing the research and doing this huge database I had. That at the end I realized there is no justice, and it's very hard. On the one hand, each of us is researcher. On the other hand, is moral and ethical human being that then had hard time to grasp with this situation.
Yeah. When you as you describe it, it's when others have already bought, the properties have already been sold. But do you have any positive stories of people who have gotten back at least mobile property? Are there any of those positive stories that we can hold on to in a sense?
Yes, there are people that it's a lengthy legal process, but they were able to go through it and got some of their paintings back. Recently, it was also article in New York Times about Reichsmann family that went through all this process and won. Also, it's not the first one. We have some that are still going on. Now we actually, this is the new chapter because we opened this discussion. So the discussion is open, and now it's a question of time when more people will apply. And also the way I did the research, and later it became open database that people can use and maybe trace something that they didn't know they had. There are ways also to kind of give back the immobile property through some kind of maybe financial. There are other ways, not just giving property physically. I think the most important thing is to open this discussion. It's also the mentality change, because people didn't have, throughout the communism, the people didn't have this idea of private property. It's something that is in the cities. In the villages, the property was not taken unless it was big. But this idea of city being some kind of a hotel for workers that use the property, it's something that takes time. It's when the society goes through this kind of changes from communism to democracy, it's a long process. So it will take generations, but it's important to, I think, to make the first step, and then the steps will follow.
Yeah. So how do you perceive the attitudes toward the Jewish people of Croatia today? Do you see some positive signs, or what are some of the concerns? What are the things that are worked on in terms of relationships between the various people groups, even today in Croatia?
Well, first, the Jewish community is very small. Today, it's a tiny community, so sometimes the different Jewish visitors ask if there is anti-Semitism, and then we answer there are no Jews. There is always the way to be anti-Semitic even without the Jews. But as I found out, but each of our experiences may differ. We are one of the rare people that are also religious. This is mostly a very secular community, and through different life circumstances, we became religious. And in Judaism, to be religious is to do. It's really to live religious life. It's not just what I think, it's what I do. And this is how we also raised our children. And my son used to wear kippah all his life, and it's our experience. And as I said, everybody has its own experience. Was overtly positive. It's something that even for people of Croatia today, after knowing what was happening and Croatia being kind of ally, but actually not nominally ally, but really kind of a client state, to see somebody who is openly Jewish is sometimes it brings to people this joy and positive attitude, even not only neutral, when they recognize you as Jewish. It's so, I mean, as I said, my personal experience is our rabbi that is also very visibly Jewish because he belongs to Chabad, so it's very also overtly positive. So I would say I would be optimistic as attitudes of the wider society. The problem with the Jewish community itself is that it's assimilating, and I don't know how long its future will be.
Yeah. So can you tell me what are some things from your studies and life experiences that we can learn from to help us make better decisions, both as individuals, as organizations, certainly as countries, although that's a tougher one to speak to, but any of the kind of the lessons, applications that we can take away?
It's very hard to give kind of these recipes, because on one hand, there is this very positive trends of today's societies that are more, I would not say more open, but more, I mean, it's like more harmonized on one hand, and then we have these big divisions within societies, you know, that are becoming deeper and more going to different conflicts, very conflicted. So it's very, I don't know how to define the society. It's not only in Europe, or I follow also what I can follow the United States, even Israel. It's very, on one side, we are kind of growing, and but on the other side, we have this conflict that maybe are coming out of insecurity, that maybe some groups are becoming less influenced, and you know, people are on one hand, I see it also in Israel, going back to religion, which makes other people uncomfortable, and then now I made it even more complicated. I really don't have a recipe. I mean, for me, it's important that what Rabbi Sachs said, it's the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Jonathan Sachs, that in each era, the anti-Semitism that is prevalent is politically correct and positive, seen as a positive. Like at some point, the religious anti-Judaism was seen as a positive. Then the modern anti-Semitism, and today this is anti-Zionism. So it's seen as a positive and politically correct and progressive. I can see now that more and more people are understanding that this is today's most prevalent form of anti-Semitism and reacting on this. So I tend to be always optimistic. I think it helps us also to form our future as well, the present and the future. This everything will be well attitude, not kind of whatever happens. I mean, I'm doing it to make it better. It's so I think that wider aspects of society are understanding that this is now the most prevalent type of anti-Semitism, and that that's recognized. So I would be positive and optimistic, cautiously optimistic.
Yes. And at the same time, as working on solutions, bringing things in front of people, which is something that certainly I'm a strong proponent on also, is just encouraging people to act. So much of what I do a lot of work on evil and the problem of evil. And my main message always ends up being, do something. See what is evil, face it, speak up. Don't let it just go by. Speak up, be an agent. And when evil has happened, be part of the healing process. Do what we can to prevent it, to speak up when it's happening or before when we see it coming, and to do what we can with the tools that we have. And so that's, I so appreciate that's what you're doing. That's what I seek to do. It's, let's bring these the horrors and the tragedies, face them and call them evil. Say these were terrible, these were horrible, these caused suffering, and just speaking up about it, and so that everyone can see other humans. We are all of value, and so that is our call, to be able to work together, recognize our differences and work together with as well as in spite of, but it's with as well as in spite of our differences, and because of our differences all the more to work together. So
the differences also make us more rich. And what I see, first, all of us are made on the image of God. And so all of us have part of God within us, and the differences make us, it makes us richer. It makes us, we cannot imagine that every world looks the same, but of course, and to act. That was always my kind of motto, to act, and then the change will come.
Yes, I so agree. And we have Göran here also in the discussion. I think Göran wanted to ask some questions, possibly of me as well. But so Göran, can we invite you into our conversation?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation. It's a very complex history. It's a lot of diversity. There are many geographical areas to many political fractions. First of all, I'm a New Testament guy, working with the New Testament. I'm thrilled because when we read when Paul is mentioning in his letter to the Romans, it says he started in Jerusalem and he had his mission to Illyria. And Illyria is today's Croatia. So it is, you're mentioned in the Bible, mentioned in the New Testament. And that brings me to my question, because when you say Yugoslavia, that involves also, at least historically, Bosnia, Serbia as well. And my question is, the anti-Semitism today or historically, how much can that be derived to the church? Christian anti-Semitism, or is there a difference in the Catholic Croatia compared to the Orthodox Serbia? Is it possible to say something about that?
I never actually went through sources. It's a historian usually have to go through the sources. What I don't do a lot is researching anti-Semitism, because I'm doing Jewish history, and anti-Semitism is part of majority history. I cannot say it in this micro region. I didn't research enough, but because I teach European Jewish history, what's interesting is that I do find some works talking about larger parts of Europe, like Russian Empire versus Poland, Lithuania, and it's basically this dilemma. I've read some research telling that the Catholic Church was more anti-Semitic, that the Orthodox Church was not. But on the other hand, the Russian Empire didn't allow Jews in the Russian Empire, and the first Jews came there only when they partitioned Poland. So I wouldn't agree on this kind of conclusions. What I think here we had a different dynamic of history in Serbia, Jewish history in Serbia and then in Croatia, because Serbia was a long time part of the Ottoman Empire. Right when they started to become independent and were fighting for their independence, there were some anti-Jewish pogroms. We can see this also in Greece partially. We can see in Bulgaria. So it's all this Christian Orthodox world. But I would say that here the nationalist, also the national context is involved, because the Jews were a special group of the Ottoman Empire. So were the Christian Orthodox, but then this rising of nation state concept, I think, was intertwined. And we are famous here in the Southeastern Europe, especially with this territory that was under the Ottomans, that we have these identities intertwined. This is why it was not easy for Jews to acculturate, because the Serbian is one who is Christian Orthodox at the same time, and the Croatian is a Catholic at the same time, and where do the Jews fit in? So, on the other hand, we had the Habsburg Empire that actually cultivated this multinational and multi-religious identity. So, in this context, the Jews were well acculturated within the empire. At the same time, we do have religious anti-Semitism in the Habsburg Empire. We know about it, and it's kind of a Catholic empire. But I would really have to, do some more research to try to conclude how much is it religious and how much is this national. But of course, the concepts came from the pre-modern Christianity.
Thank you.